that we did in ITS. It was mainly done by Andrew Smith, Brian Matthews and Chris Nash, but also with the help of other partners, especially VTI in Sweden. And here we're looking at the incentive for innovation. So it's not enough to just know whether innovation is worth pursuing from a socio-economic point of view or from a financial point of view. It's also important to know what are the incentives for the railways to innovate and whether there are some significant barriers stopping railways moving forward with technology. This is what we find to be a problem, that actually there seem to be slow rates of innovation in the rail industry, especially when compared with other industries, and to an extent some failure or difficulties implementing the results of research. That this seems to have been commented by some funders like the European Commission or RSSB in the UK. So, as I say, it's not just about developing innovation and assessing how economically sound they are. We need to look at what the industry thinks. Why are things like they are at the moment? The approach conducted for this part of the work was a literature review combined with interviews. Interviews were done in Britain, but also in Germany and Sweden. With, in Britain, for example, with the infrastructure manager, operating companies, DFT, the rail delivery group, and so on. And we also have reports from partners from Slovenia, Sweden, and France. What we found, summarizing, is that actually there are some significant barriers, and we can highlight two in particular, probably familiar to you already. One is fragmentation in some rail industries, typically in the form of vertically separated railways, although there are all sorts of things and it's not as straightforward. There are a lot of components, and some railways industry have different shapes, etc. And the second will be short time horizons versus long time horizons. So the first issue of fragmentation can mean that different organizations within a railway, for instance, if we think of the UK, Network Rail and the train operating companies, maybe the incentives are not aligned, or maybe if one of them is to invest in new technology, it's the other who benefits. Therefore, and because there are plenty of mechanisms in between where they have to work together, but at the same time they work separately, and the sort of legal issues in between and regulatory problems, it is not straightforward to implement certain technologies. So this, for instance, sophisticated track access charges can help to give the right incentives, but not always. For example, if we think of the problem of punctuality, and we can think in the context of developing these new monitoring techniques for the track that can help Network Rail maybe improve the preventive approach and reduce delays in the network, which is one of the main problems in the UK. Actually, the train operating companies should cooperate. For example, they could install some of these devices on the trains, right? It probably depends partly on them. But they will have limited incentive to do so, because at the moment they get full compensation when Network Rail causes a delay to them. They get compensation to the point that they estimate what the expected long-term demand reductions are from these delays. So if Network Rail causes them a delay, they are compensated. So why should they bother investing in new technologies that reduce those delays, for instance? And then we have short-time horizons. On the one hand, we have train operating companies in vertically separated railways, which will have a limited life. Therefore, there's obviously no incentive to look beyond that, unless they want to renew the contract and are sure that they could get it. But also from the infrastructure manager. Again, for instance, in the UK, there are regulatory targets, so meeting targets every 5 years for the control period. And we have had several conversations with Network Rail where we've seen that even if they see or they're aware that some technology, for instance, some new type of steel for the tracks, makes sense in the long term because they reduce significantly life cycle costs, maybe over a period of 30, 60 years, as typical appraisals are. They may not be able to implement them because they have short-term cash cost restrictions. So it's not just on the operating company side, it's also in infrastructure management you could find this sort of element. This is just one example. There are several solutions, and they typically come in the form of rethinking the structure of the industry. Obviously, as you all know, separating the industry have always been justified on the grounds of promoting efficiency and competitive markets. But what we have seen now, as what we want to emphasize, is that there are other elements as well that are important, like promoting innovation. Because at the end, in the long term, innovation can also promote efficiency by bringing costs down and by making us go farther, achieving possibilities that currently we don't have. So you have to, it seems overall, as you'll see here, that this like continuous trade-off between different aspects. So one of the solutions is the holding company model in Germany, where it ensures more that all the agents in the industry have the same incentive and they do things more jointly, but at the same time could be hampered if you have several operating companies. I mean, it kind of, there is a belief that actually if you have more than one operator being dominant, it may not work as well. So it also has this problem. Another solution is to devise mechanisms to ensure that long-run benefits are considered in the appraisal of projects and technologies. For instance, in Sweden, they don't have these regulatory targets that the UK have, so maybe they are less constrained to implement something that is costly now, but they know in 30 years' time will put them in a much better position. And in Britain, to an extent, now the role of EFD can ensure that whatever technological investment is needed could take place, but of course in practice it's not easy because all these different agents playing a role at the same time can slow down these processes. And finally, another solution, perhaps a bit more obvious, is to extend franchises terms and control periods, but again, somebody could argue it could reduce pressure on costs, and actually maybe innovations are not even a matter of extending marginally these franchises 5-10 more years. It's actually a much more longer term issue than that. And risk sharing as well. So risk sharing is another way of trying to align the interests of different parties, but they will be specific for some particular problems and they may not always work. We've seen sometimes in the UK. So, final comment. As I said, we think it's really important to add the role of incentive to innovation into the bigger picture. It's not just about thinking of cost savings and efficiency in the short term. The long term and the role of incentive and the role of innovations and technology can actually be really important in pushing forward not only efficiency but also the quality of the network and the resilience of the network. And looking at the rail industry structure can help in trying to balance all these different objectives, where we will always find advantages and disadvantages, and there will be plenty of trade-offs to make. But at least it's just important to bear that in mind. And there will never be just one solution, and I guess we'll always have to be learning to try to get to always better situations over time. So, thank you very much. This is some other deliverables from Work Package 1. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.